All right, today we're diving into a fascinating cryptographic detective story. We're going to look at what some have called the blockchain's perfect crime, and then explore the absolutely ingenious solution to a problem that for a long time seemed completely unsolvable.
So at the very heart of this mystery is a simple, almost philosophical question. Think about it. It's really easy to prove something exists, right? You show it to someone, but proving a negative, proving an absence, that's a whole different ballgame. It's so much harder. And in the world of blockchain, a problem like this could actually bring the entire system down.
To really get why this is such a huge deal, we have to start with a dream, the ultimate goal of a truly decentralized world. And we call it the light client promise. Just imagine a future where your phone, your laptop, even tiny little sensors can all participate in the blockchain with the exact same level of security as some massive server in a data center. Imagine them verifying that the chain is valid without having to download hundreds of gigabytes of data. I mean, this is the vision that makes a truly decentralized network possible for everyone. But, of course, there's a catch. There's a loophole that could allow for the perfect, undetectable crime.
And this is what brings us to the crime scene. An attack so subtle, so brilliant, that all our usual security measures are just completely powerless against it. You see, it's a crime of omission, not commission.
So the first line of defense in the blockchain world is something called a fraud proof. The best way to think of it is like a detective. If a block creator does something obviously wrong, like including a fraudulent transaction to print money out of thin air, this detective can just point to that transaction as evidence and prove the block is invalid. Easy. Case closed. Yeah, this slide really lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got a simple crime, a bad transaction. The evidence is right there, clear as day. But on the right, that's our perfect crime. The block's creator doesn't make an error. They simply hide a piece of the data. They never even publish it. So now there's no evidence of wrongdoing to point to. There's only an absence of data, and you just can't prove a crime with evidence that doesn't exist.
So, what do you do? This is the key question that just completely stumps our detective. A fraud proof needs an error to point at, but when the attacker's crime is simply withholding information, our detective shows up to the crime scene and finds nothing. How could they possibly solve the case? Well, this leads to a truly maddening paradox.
And this leads us to what's known in the space as the fisherman's dilemma, a scenario that makes this whole problem feel utterly impossible to solve. Okay, let's just walk through this. Picture this scenario. First, a watchful node on the network, we'll call it our fisherman, notices a piece of a new block is missing, so it sounds the alarm. Then, almost instantly, the block's creator publishes that exact piece of data that was supposedly missing. So now you have the mystery. If you're an observer who shows up just a second later, you have no way of knowing who was telling the truth. Was the creator maliciously hiding data, or was the fisherman just a liar trying to cause trouble? It's impossible to know. It's a classic he said, she said. And this quote from the source material just gets right to the heart of it. The fault is not uniquely attributable. You can't prove who's to blame, the accuser or the accused. And because of that, you can't punish anyone. And let's be honest, a system that can't punish bad actors is fundamentally insecure. This leaves the network designers with a completely impossible choice. I mean, look at your options. If you reward the fisherman for sounding the alarm, people will just raise false alarms all day to get free money. If you don't reward them, then attackers can hide data without any consequences at all. And if you try to penalize the fisherman for a potentially false alarm, well, then nobody will ever report a real attack. It is a lose-lose-lose situation.
For a really long time, this dilemma seemed totally unbreakable, a perfect crime with no solution. But then, computer scientists and cryptographers pulled out a tool from their toolbox that honestly feels like a genuine superpower. The hero of our story is called erasure coding. It's this really clever method of encoding data where you expand it by adding redundant information. The result is a new, larger data set where you can literally lose huge chunks of it and still be able to perfectly reconstruct the original. So here's how it works, in 3 pretty simple steps. First, you take your original block and you split it into, let's say, m pieces. Then, using some really clever math, you expand that data into a larger set of n pieces. And now here's the magic trick. As long as you can find any m pieces from that new, larger set, you can perfectly recreate the entire original block. It doesn't even matter which m pieces you find. This just completely flips the script on the attacker. They can no longer get away with the subtle crime of just hiding 1 or 2 little pieces of the block. No way. To succeed now, they have to hide a massive portion of it. We're talking more than half of the extended data. Their perfect subtle crime is forced to become a loud, obvious, and very easily detectable act of vandalism. Okay, so now we have our superpower. Let's see how we can use it to finally solve this unsolvable problem and bring our perfect criminal to justice.
The solution is just beautifully elegant. Now, a light client doesn't need to download the whole block. It just randomly samples a few small pieces of the extended data. If it can find enough of those pieces, specifically a majority of them, it has a mathematical guarantee that the entire original block is available and can be reconstructed by anyone who needs it. So the question, is 100% of the data there, has been replaced by the much easier question, is at least 50% of the extended data there?
And this gives the light client ironclad certainty. By just confirming that the majority of this extended data is available, it knows that any potential crime is now detectable. So, if the block data itself is bad, a standard fraud proof will catch it. If the attacker messes up the erasure coding, a special fraud proof can prove that too. Every single path for the attacker is now closed. There are no more perfect crimes.
And look, this isn't just some theory. The source material gives us some real-world performance numbers. And as you can see, yeah, the encoding times is significant, a full 120 seconds for a 1 megabyte block. But the really crucial part, the part that matters most, is the light client proof. It's incredibly small, only about 12,800 bytes. It's this trade-off that makes the whole light client promise a practical reality.
And that brings us to the end. We started with a perfect crime and a totally impossible dilemma. But with a cryptographic superpower, we found a solution that not only secures the network, but finally fulfills that grand vision of billions of devices all participating securely. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Now that we have this incredibly powerful tool for verifying things without having to see them completely, what other impossible problems are suddenly within our reach?